My name's Ryan, and on most days I live a fairly unremarkable life. I work as a data analyst for a logistics company in Portland, 8 hours a day buried in dashboards, spreadsheets, and polite meetings where people pretend to care about KPIs. It's not glamorous, but it pays well, and for the most part I've been content with that rhythm. Wake up, work, come home, dinner with Mia, maybe a show if we're not too tired. Lately though, that rhythm has felt off. Like music just slightly out of tune. But on that Thursday, things were supposed to feel different. Better. We had this company mixer scheduled at a new downtown loft space, Indigo Loft. I'd heard about it before: repurposed warehouse, rooftop views, minimalist decor, ambient lighting that made everyone look just a little more successful. The kind of place you go when you want to feel like you belong to something modern. Or expensive. Mia wasn't supposed to come, but at the last minute she said she could swing by. Client call ran long wine glass, her text read. That wine emoji felt playful, almost flirty. It made me smile. I ordered 2 glasses of the red she liked, Malbec, I think, and stood near the bar, sipping mine slowly, watching the elevator doors like I was in a rom-com. I pictured her walking in, brushing wind out of her hair, looking around for me. That dress she liked. That kiss on the cheek. I was holding space for that version of her. 10 minutes passed. 15. The room had filled with coworkers and plus ones, the usual mix of awkward small talk and people pretending to network while slowly getting tipsy. I stood near the far edge of the bar, one hand wrapped around her glass, the condensation dripping lazily onto a cocktail napkin. Every time the elevator dinged, I'd glance up. No Mia. But then, just before I considered texting her again, the elevator doors opened and I caught a glimpse of something familiar. Not someone walking in. Someone already inside. At a corner table near the floor-to-ceiling windows, tucked just slightly out of sight, Mia was sitting across from a man I instantly recognized. Troy. The new art director. Charismatic, wildly confident, the type of guy who wore scarves unironically and always had a story that began with, "When I was in Berlin." They were deep in conversation. She leaned in, laughing at something he said. Her hand gently brushed his wrist as she reached for her drink. She was wearing that wine-colored satin dress, the one she wore the night she first told me she loved me. That night still lived in my memory like a **T. Dim lights, jazz playing in the background, her whispering it like a secret she'd been holding onto too long. That dress had meant something. Now she wore it like a stranger. I just stood there, frozen, her untouched glass of wine in my hand. My own heart paused mid-beat. She hadn't seen me. Or if she had, she didn't let it show. She never once scanned the room, never checked her phone, never gave the slightest sign that I, her husband, was expected. She didn't look like someone sneaking around. That's what struck me the most. She looked relaxed. Comfortable. Like she belonged there with him. And I was just background noise. A nobody at his own event. A married man holding a second glass of wine for a woman who wasn't coming. My stomach twisted as I tried to rationalize it. Maybe they were talking about a campaign. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe the laugh was nothing. But my gut knew better. Troy reached across the table, saying something I couldn't hear. She grinned, the kind of grin I hadn't seen on her in months. Not when we watched movies, not at dinner, not even on our anniversary 2 weeks ago when I booked us a weekend away in the gorge. She'd said she loved it, but her smile then had felt polite. This one was real. I took a slow breath and told myself not to jump to conclusions. It was just a conversation, right? Just wine. Just 2 coworkers. But the way her hand lingered on his forearm? The way her posture leaned forward, like she couldn't get close enough? Those weren't details you could file under casual. I didn't move. Didn't interrupt. Just stood there, sipping warm wine that tasted like betrayal, watching a moment I was never supposed to witness. I kept thinking, maybe she'll look up. Maybe she'll see me. Maybe this isn't what it looks like. She didn't look up. Not once. I tried to swallow, but my throat felt dry. I stared at her like I didn't know her. And maybe I didn't. Not really. Not anymore. That thought hit harder than I expected. She had been my person. The one I came home to. The one I made inside jokes with. The one I'd stayed up late with during thunderstorms just to talk about where we'd travel next. And now here she was, in that same dress, giving someone else that version of her. I set the glass down and left her wine untouched. I didn't approach her. I didn't make a scene. I wasn't sure if I was angry or embarrassed. All I knew was that something between us had shifted. Irreversibly. And the worst part? She hadn't even noticed. As I turned to leave the loft, I caught a glimpse of us in the mirror behind the bar, me standing alone, and her laughing over candlelight with someone who wasn't me. It felt symbolic. Like a warning **T, I'd been too blind to see coming. I didn't go home right away. I walked the streets for a while, hands in my pockets, replaying every recent conversation. Every night she'd come home tired. Every text she said she forgot to reply to. The sudden interest in new perfumes. The phone that was always face down. I chalked it up to work stress, burnout, or just marriage settling into that long, quiet phase everyone talks about. But maybe it wasn't settling. Maybe it was slipping. And maybe I just caught it too late. After that night at Indigo Loft, everything changed, but not in the way you'd expect. I didn't confront Mia. I didn't blow up or accuse her or throw a fit. I just paused, watched, listened. I think some part of me hoped I was wrong, that there was some innocent explanation, that I was reading too much into it. But deep down, I knew. You can't unsee a look like the one she gave him. You can't unfeel that quiet humiliation. So I became hyper-aware. Not jealous. Not paranoid. Just alert. That's how it starts, by the way. Infidelity doesn't announce itself with red lipstick on a collar or a secret hotel key. It starts with a shift. A pattern you only notice when you finally stop trusting the one thing you never thought you'd question. Mia started showering at odd times right before bed, even if she hadn't gone to the gym or left the house all evening. She'd close the bathroom door, lock it, which she never used to do, and take her phone with her. I'd hear the water running, but sometimes I'd swear it was just cover noise. Not always, but enough that the doubt crept in. She changed her perfume. Not just a different scent, but a whole different vibe, bolder, sweeter, something I didn't recognize. When I asked about it, she said, "It's just a sample I got, do you like it?" But she never wore it around me again after that. Just when she was heading out. Meetings, brunches, last-minute errands. Her phone, once left on counters and coffee tables, became an extension of her hand. Always face down. Notifications silenced. Sometimes she'd tilt the screen away from me when replying to messages. She said work had gotten more intense, more demanding. I believed her. Or tried to. The little things piled up. Late nights at the office became more frequent, but I never heard her talk about projects or deadlines anymore. When I'd ask about her day, she'd give vague answers. It was fine or same old. Her eyes would flick away from mine, always landing somewhere just over my shoulder. One night, while we were watching a movie, she laughed at a text she didn't show me. I asked what was so funny. She said it was from a teammate. Just a meme. She didn't offer to share it. She used to. I didn't accuse her. I didn't even press. I just nodded. And kept watching her, not the movie. It wasn't just her actions. It was her absence. Mia had become emotionally ghosted. Like someone unplugged from our life together. She wasn't cruel or cold. She still made dinner sometimes. She still kissed me goodbye in the mornings. But it all felt transactional. Like muscle memory. No spark behind it. No intent. Just routine. She started posting less on Instagram too. That was another flag. Mia loves to post sunsets, coffee, her nail color, her food. But suddenly? Radio silence. For weeks. Then a single story, a blurry skyline and a caption that said, "Grateful." No location tag. No mention of who she was with. Just curated vagueness. I remember seeing that post and feeling this weird gut punch, like I was watching someone disappear in real time. I replied with a heart emoji. She didn't even open it. And maybe this is the part where people reading go, just talk to her, man. Be an adult. And you'd be right. But when you're living inside it, when you're holding up the pieces of your relationship, trying to figure out which ones are still real, you freeze. You stall. You hope. Because saying something out loud means you're ready for an answer. And I wasn't. Not yet. So I played along. Smiled. Cleaned the kitchen. Rubbed her back when she said she had a long day. Even though I knew those days weren't always spent where she claimed. I started doing my own subtle digging. Checking the bank account more often. Nothing glaring stood out, just the occasional coffee shop charge across town or dinners that didn't line up with her calendar. She'd say she worked through lunch, but there'd be a charge for 2 meals. She'd say she grabbed a quick salad, but there'd be a full entree and dessert. The lies weren't loud. They were quiet. Strategic. She'd started changing her passwords, too. We never really shared them, we trusted each other. But she used to type hers openly. Now, she'd tilt the screen away or wait until I left the room. I tried not to let that sting. But it did. Every little shift in behavior felt like a new breadcrumb leading toward the same conclusion. But I wasn't sure what scared me more, what she was doing, or what it meant about us. I started going to bed earlier. Just to avoid the silence. Or to avoid hearing her laugh quietly to someone over text. Sometimes I'd hear her come in late, try to sneak into bed without waking me. But I always woke up. I always knew. And each night, I'd stare at the ceiling and think, how did we get here? We used to talk about everything. Even the hard stuff. Finances. Family. Our future. Now, I couldn't get her to sit through an entire episode of anything without reaching for her phone. She'd say she was just checking in on something. But I knew it wasn't work. You don't check on spreadsheets with that kind of smile. So I waited. I gathered. I became the version of myself I didn't recognize, a man with quiet suspicions and no proof, only a growing list of inconsistencies and gut feelings. But even still, I told myself, maybe there's still a chance. Maybe it's a phase. Maybe she's overwhelmed. Maybe I'm wrong. But I wasn't. I just hadn't caught up to the truth yet. That Saturday started like any other, rain tapping against the windows, Mia in leggings and a hoodie, hair pulled into that effortless bun she wore when she didn't want to try but still looked effortlessly beautiful. I was making coffee, half listening as she moved around the kitchen, talking about how Kelsey from her team had convinced her to try a new spin class. We'll probably grab smoothies after, she added, not quite looking at me. Don't wait for me. I'll be back before dinner. I nodded, sipping my coffee slowly like that would keep me from saying what I really wanted to say. That none of this added up. That she looked way too polished for a workout. That she'd put on makeup just to sweat it out. But I didn't say it. I just smiled like a fool and told her to have fun. She kissed me on the cheek, grabbed her keys, and left. And the second that door closed, I felt my heart thump hard, like my body was telling me enough. Go find out. It was this strange clarity, a break in the fog. I wasn't crazy. I just needed proof. So I grabbed my jacket, got in the car, and started driving. I didn't even have a real plan. I just drove toward downtown, toward the last place I ever wanted to find answers. I passed the gym she said she was going to. Her car wasn't there. Not even close. So I kept driving. And that's when I saw it. The Violet Fig. A quiet little bar tucked on the edge of the Pearl District. Classy enough to feel cozy, but hidden enough that you could go unnoticed if you wanted. Mia and I used to go there when we first started dating. They had her favorite wine, those tiny candles on every table, and music that was always just loud enough to make you lean in close. It had memories layered into the walls. I hadn't been back in years. Apparently, Mia had. Her car was parked right outside. My stomach dropped. I pulled over and sat there for a moment, the engine humming beneath me. I wasn't ready to see what I already knew. But I couldn't drive away now. I had to know. I walked in. And immediately, the bartender smiled, recognizing me like I was a regular or something. Hey, you're here for Mia, right? He asked casually. I froze. What? He didn't pick up on the crack in my voice. Yeah, she's usually here Tuesdays and sometimes Saturdays. Second table from the left. You should stop by more, her other guys are also uptight. Other guys? Plural. He thought I was one of them. He didn't know I was her husband. My legs moved before I could stop them, carrying me toward the table he pointed out. And there she was. Mia. Sitting across from Troy. His hand resting gently on her waist like it belonged there. Her laugh filled the air, light and warm and familiar. She was drinking my favorite wine. The same wine I'd ordered for her at Indigo Loft. The one she never touched. And now she was sipping it with him. It hit me like a freight train. This wasn't new. This wasn't some one-time mistake or fleeting moment of bad judgment. This was something they had built. Without me. I stood there, invisible again, just like at the loft. Like a ghost floating through a scene from someone else's life. They didn't even notice me. Didn't even look. Troy leaned in, whispered something that made her blush. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, something she did when she wanted to be seen as cute, bashful, desirable. She used to do it with me. Now I watched her do it for him. The bartender handed me a menu without asking. I set it down and walked out. Outside, the air was crisp, the sky gray and spitting rain. I stood on the sidewalk, staring at her car, wondering how many times she'd parked it there while I was home, clueless. Folding laundry. Paying bills. Texting her, asking if she needed anything on the way back. I thought about that wine emoji she'd sent me on Thursday. It wasn't for me. It was for him. I thought about how many nights she came home smiling, claiming she'd had a long day. How many times I'd massaged her shoulders while she texted him under the blanket. How many times I'd tried to fix what I didn't even know was broken. I wasn't just blind. I was background. A placeholder. A comfort she kept around for convenience while her real life played out somewhere else, between quiet corners and wine glasses and someone else's hands. I drove home in silence. No music. Just the sound of my own heartbeat pounding like a war drum. And for the first time I let the truth fully settle in. This wasn't about her being unhappy. This wasn't a rough patch. This was betrayal. Ongoing. Polished. Deliberate. And me, the husband, had just been the naive audience watching the new act unfold. She came home that night humming. Humming. Keys jingling, heels tapping lightly across the hardwood like nothing was wrong. Like the world hadn't cracked in half a few hours ago. She dropped her purse by the bench, slipped off her shoes, and walked into the kitchen where I sat, still, lights low. "Oh hey," she said, like it was nothing. Like I was just any other evening waiting for her. I didn't say a word. She didn't notice. She walked to the fridge, grabbed a bottle of sparkling water, popped it open. Her movements were so familiar. So normal. But everything in the air around us had changed. It's funny, the way silence can start to scream. The kind that coils in your chest and makes everything louder, her footsteps, the fizz of her drink, the soft buzz of her phone when it lit up on the counter. She picked it up, read the message, smiled. Still didn't look at me. Still didn't see me. I watched her, wondering how long I'd been invisible in my own house. How long she'd been pretending. If she even needed to anymore. "I thought you were going to the gym," I said finally, my voice steady but flat. She froze, just for a split second, but recovered fast. "Yeah, we, stopped for smoothies after. Then I grabbed a drink with Kelsey." I nodded. She didn't ask me about my day. Didn't ask what I'd done or why I was sitting in the dark like someone grieving a ghost. She just sipped her water, leaned on the counter, and started scrolling through her phone. That's when it hit me. She wasn't even lying well anymore. She didn't have to. Because she knew I wouldn't push. And maybe she was right. Because I didn't. I just stared at her, trying to remember the last time she looked at me like she wanted me. The last time her laugh felt full, not automated. The last time her touch meant something more than a habit. We went through the motions that night: dinner, dishes, brushing our teeth side by side. She laughed at something on her phone again and showed me a meme. I fake laughed, nodded, said, "That's funny," and let the silence swallow us again. In bed, she turned off her bedside lamp first and rolled to her side, facing away from me. No goodnight. No kiss. Just a pause. And then breathing that told me she was gone. Not asleep. Just gone. I lay there on the edge of the mattress, staring at the ceiling, feeling like I was sleeping next to a stranger who used to be my favorite person. There's a kind of heartbreak that doesn't explode, it just lingers. It infects everything slowly. Every room. Every touch. Every word you don't say. And that was us now. We didn't fight. We didn't cry. We just coexisted. Neighbors with shared Wi-Fi. Sometimes I caught myself imagining she was a roommate. That we were just awkward cohabitants passing each other in the hallway, making small talk, keeping the peace. That fantasy actually hurt less than trying to picture us as the couple we used to be. She still wore her ring. So did I. But we didn't wear each other anymore. She laughed less around me. Or maybe she just saved the real ones for someone else. The fake ones she gave me? They were rehearsed. Delicate. Perfectly timed. The kind you learn when you've got something to hide and still want to seem normal. I stopped reaching for her hand in public. Stopped hugging her from behind while she cooked. Stopped asking her how work was or who she was texting. The answers didn't matter anymore. They weren't for me. One night, I walked in from work and heard her on the phone in the kitchen. She was laughing, really laughing. Not the soft one she used on me. This one was alive. Free. She called him teammate, but I knew. I knew. I stood there in the hallway for a while, coat still on, shoes wet from the rain. Just listening. When she finally noticed me and hung up, she smiled and said, "Oh, you're home. How was traffic?" Like we were still pretending. I said it was fine. Dinner that night was chicken and roasted vegetables. She made it like she used to, but it didn't taste like anything. I chewed and nodded and smiled and played my part. She joked about a video she saw online. I laughed. She poured us wine. I drank mine and asked if she wanted to watch something. She said she was tired. I washed the dishes while she disappeared upstairs. That was the night I realized it was already over. We weren't fighting. We weren't screaming. We weren't talking. And that absence? That space between us? It was louder than anything we could have said. She still slept beside me, still folded my laundry, still asked me if I needed anything from the store. But she was already gone. Mentally. Emotionally. Spiritually. And me? I was just the last piece of her old life she hadn't figured out how to let go of yet. Or maybe she didn't care enough to. Maybe she thought I'd never notice. Or maybe, just maybe, she knew I had. And we were both too exhausted to say it out loud. About a week after the night I heard her laughing on the phone, his voice barely muffled behind hers, Mia came to me with an idea. A trip, she said, smiling like she'd just invented the concept. Just us. Get away for a weekend. Reset. I was pouring cereal at the time. She waited for me to say something while almond milk soaked into the flakes. A trip. I asked, keeping my voice flat. Yeah. Kelsey said we could use her family's cabin in Ashland. Remember that place? From 2 summers ago? You said it was peaceful. I remembered. I remembered us sitting on the porch, her feet in my lap, reading out loud from that weird mystery novel while the sun dipped below the treetops. I remembered grilling burgers, drinking too much red wine, skinny dipping under a full moon. That trip was us. Before everything went silent. But that version of us? Felt like someone else's life now. Still, I said yes. Maybe I was curious. Maybe I wanted to see if she meant it, if there was a sliver of the woman I loved still under all this distance. We left Friday afternoon. She packed in a rush, overpacked really. I watched her fold sweaters she never wore anymore, the same perfume bottles she never used around me. She curled her hair, put on a bit of makeup for the drive. You're doing a lot for a no-signal cabin, I said. She laughed it off. It's not for the cabin. It's for you. I didn't believe her. The drive was quiet. Not uncomfortable, just empty. We passed the usual scenery, gray clouds, evergreens leaning like they were tired too. She tried playing one of our old playlists. Songs from college. From the road trips we used to take before Spotify knew our taste better than we did. When our song came on, yes, we had one, she turned it up and glanced at me. I gave her a weak smile, then looked out the window. It felt dishonest, that song. Like hearing a promise neither of us intended to keep. At the cabin, everything looked the same. Same flannel couch, same firewood stack outside, same wind chime with the crooked bell hanging from the porch. But we weren't the same. She started doing all the things I used to love. Put on music while she cooked. Told a story from work that made her laugh too loud. Even wore that soft cardigan I always teased her about, said she looked like a librarian in a Hallmark movie. It should have been endearing. Instead, it felt like she was reading from a script. Like she had Googled how to be the woman your husband used to love. I played along. I helped chop vegetables. I asked questions. I even laughed when she made a dumb pun about mushrooms. But none of it landed the way it used to. I could feel the gap between us like an invisible wall. Every joke, every smile hollow. Later, she suggested a walk through the woods behind the cabin. We never did that last time, she said, slipping her hand into mine. Her fingers were cold. Her touch felt practiced. We walked in silence for a while, the trail damp beneath our boots, pine needles crunching underfoot. Birds chirped like they didn't know better. She pointed at moss patterns on tree bark like it meant something. I nodded a lot. When we got back, I built a fire while she scrolled her phone by the window. So much for no signal. I didn't ask who she was texting. I didn't need to. That night, she played our song again. Lit candles. Even opened the bottle of wine we'd been saving since our anniversary. I sipped mine like I was reading a label, trying to find the truth in its notes. There wasn't any. She leaned into me on the couch. Told me she missed us. Her eyes were soft, voice warm. But I could tell she was playing a version of herself. Maybe she wanted it to be real. But it wasn't. I smiled anyway. Later, I said I was going to shower. I stood there under the water until it turned cold, letting it burn the numbness out of my skin. I tried to scrub off the parts of myself that still hoped. That still hurt. When I got out, she was already in bed. She didn't say a word. Just turned on her side back toward me. I stared at the ceiling for a long time, the moonlight cutting pale shapes across the cabin walls. Her breathing was steady, calm. Like someone at peace. I wasn't. That was the moment it hit me, she wasn't trying to fix things. She was trying to ease her guilt. This trip wasn't about rediscovery. It was her attempt at closure with the illusion of kindness. A soft landing. A gentle way to say goodbye without saying it. And that back she turned to me? That was the final sentence. Wordless. Just a period. I woke up before the sun the next morning. It wasn't because of noise or restlessness. It wasn't because I had somewhere to be. I just opened my eyes and knew. Something in me had clicked into place during the night, like my brain had finally accepted what my heart had been too slow to catch up with. This wasn't a marriage anymore. It was a slow-motion ending dressed up as endurance. So I got out of bed quietly. Mia was still asleep, facing the window, her breathing soft and even. The blanket was pulled halfway down her back. I stared for a second longer than I probably should have, not because I was still in love, but because I was grieving the idea of her. Of us. I walked into the kitchen, made coffee without noise, and sat down at the old oak table with my laptop. The light from the screen cast a blue glow across my hands as I opened the browser. Divorce lawyer near me. Simple. Cold. Just like everything else had become. Within 20 minutes, I had scheduled a consultation. Downloaded the paperwork. Printed the forms. It felt mechanical. Clinical. Like checking a box. Then I went into my desk drawer and pulled out a folder, the one we usually kept for travel documents and tax stuff, and slipped the papers inside. When I was done, I placed it neatly on the mantel right next to her favorite candle, the lavender and eucalyptus one she always lit after a long day. The irony didn't miss me. It was a kind of offering. A peace treaty. A quiet exit wound. By the time she woke up, I was already back in the kitchen, sipping coffee like it was any other morning. She shuffled in, hair messy, still wearing the oversized tee she liked to sleep in. She looked normal. Like she hadn't quietly destroyed everything between us. She didn't notice the folder at first. "Morning," she said, yawning. "What's for breakfast?" I didn't answer. She walked past me, pulled out the cereal box, and that's when she saw it. The beige folder sitting like a ghost next to the candle. She froze. "Ryan?" Her voice cracked a little. I didn't look at her. She opened it. The silence that followed felt like time stopped. Then came the sharp inhale. The paper rustling. Then, her voice tight, almost shaking. "You can't be serious." I finally looked up. "I am," I said. "I was last night. I just didn't say it yet." She stared at me as if trying to see if I was bluffing. As if there was still time to rewind. But there wasn't. That window had closed in the bar, sealed shut in the cabin, and now she was standing in the aftermath. First came the tears. Not the slow, cinematic kind. These were frantic. Immediate. The kind you cry when you realize the consequences are real. "No," she said. "No, we can fix this. Please, Ryan. Please don't do this. I'll stop talking to him. I'll delete everything. We can go to therapy. We can You already had your chance," I said quietly. "And you spent it lying." Then came the rage. The tears evaporated. Her face twisted, voice rising. "I gave you everything. Do you know how suffocating it was to be with someone who never really saw me? You were like furniture with a paycheck." The words hit like a slap. But I didn't flinch. I just looked at her, at this stranger I used to call my wife, as she hurled the words like grenades, hoping one would break through. Hoping one would spark something. Anger. Hurt. Anything. But all I felt was tired. Then she picked up my coffee mug, the one that said "World's Okayest Husband," a dumb joke from a trip to Seattle, and threw it against the wall. It shattered. The handle spun across the floor like a loose tooth. "I gave you 10 years, she sobbed. "And this is how you end it?" "No," I said. "You ended it. I'm just drawing the line." She sank onto the kitchen stool, head in her hands, sobbing into her palms. Her shoulders trembled like she might split in half. I didn't comfort her. I didn't move. I let her sit in the mess she'd made. The real one, not the shards on the floor. Eventually, the room fell quiet again. I picked up my keys. "I'll be back later," I said. "Where are you going?" she asked, voice muffled. "Somewhere quiet." I walked out, closing the door gently behind me. No slamming. No screaming. Just the sound of a clean break echoing through the morning.